When planar IEMs first hit the market, it was a new driver type, and hence everybody was very excited about it, but it was a little bit pricey. As technology becomes more mature, we now have access to more affordable planar IEMs. Today we are going to take a look at the Artti T10, a cheapie planar offering, and see if they are decent, or are they just some rubbish planar IEMs. Starting off with an unboxing, packaging on the T10 is very simple. So simple, in fact, you can already kind of visualize everything in the box even without looking. On the front, you have a sleeve with the IEMs plastered in the center with really not much flair going on, and it's pretty reminiscent of packaging from the 90s. Inside it, you have the T10 sitting there, and below that you have a generic earphone case which contains all the SID accessories including the cable and ear tips. Then again, this costs about $70 to $80, so I don't really expect all that much. Build quality. Chassis of the T10 is quite different from the usual custom universal shape that we see all the time these days. In a way, its simple beigey circular shape that looks rather nipply is rather refreshing. It feels surprisingly solid, especially when you compare to some competing custom universal IEMs. There isn't too much play in the plastics. Also, they do have a faceplate of sort where a metal coin is on the front of it. It looks nice, albeit a little bit simple. The T10 provides you with a 2-pin termination for easy cable swaps. Inside the T10 is a 14.2mm planar driver. It uses dual magnets that runs parallel, allowing for quick diaphragm movements. What is surprisingly nice on the T10 is the 2-pin cable provided. This is a 4-core silver-plated copper that is oxygen-free. It's pretty much like a temporal anomaly. It's not supposed to be this good at this price point. My unit is terminated to a 4.4mm. Sound. The T10 has quite a distinct planar flavor to them. This is most evident in the bass region where it sounds pretty linear compared to dynamic driver IEMs. Bass just seem to come at you pretty quickly. The T10 has a V-shaped signature that is very popular for good reason. It provides good bass impact while leaving enough room for mid-range to be clear. Also, as it uses only a single planar, the T10 is very coherent sounding with no funkiness with mismatched phase. The T10 has a very pleasing character and would be a great addition for folks who are looking to try out a planar IEM that is affordable and tuned very decently. Bass exhibits typical linear planar response where it just seems to come at you all at once. I found that they render sub-bass a little bit more prominently with a slight dip when it comes to mid-bass. This is nicely done as bass still sounds meaty despite the slight dip in mid-bass and crafts a very nice space for mid-range to shine rather than making them sound, well, congested. Transients is above average on the T10, which is very respectable at its price range. Resolution here is also very pleasing as well. Mid-range are clear and given good space from the careful tuning of bass. Vocals are quite evenly tuned for both male and female vocals. Both have good weight and are rather nimble. I found vocals to be placed rather nicely in the mix, not too forward nor too backwards. The slight emphasis on the upper mids does help in giving more definition in the mid-range. Instruments are very expressive, clear, and carry good energy in the mix. Supporting instruments still sound clear and distinct despite them being mastered to not take center stage. It's present enough to be interesting. Tonal weight sits nicely centered between natural and warm. Resolution is also very decent. Treble. One major complaint when it comes to typical planar IEMs is that treble can be a little bit much, but I am actually rather pleased to say that the T10 has quite a mature rendering of treble. It is present but never imposing, making the overall tone subtly airy with good resolution. It isn't sibilant, and should there be any sibilance, it could be due to the track being poorly mastered. Soundstage. When it comes to width and height, for its price class, width and height is rendered very well. It isn't the biggest that I've heard, but for below $100, I think it does a good job. Imagine a smaller jazz club, it is kinda similar to that. Depth and positioning. Depth perception is above average but can be better should bass be a little bit more nuanced. Positioning is good on the whole as well. And next up, let's talk about some comparisons. Firstly, versus the Kiwiears Melody. So the T10 is priced rather similar to the Kiwiears Melody, and between the two, I'd say that the T10 is more refined sounding by comparison. Both these two IEMs uses a planar driver, but the way the T10 renders treble is more mature. It isn't as splashy as the Melody melody and will be a more pleasing overall listen. They both do share a similar tonal color where bass is still kinda linear, but the T10 is tuned with a bit more finesse. Next up, versus Simgot EW300. The EW300 is Simgot's latest offering that features a tri-braid design. One dynamic driver, one planar, and one piezoelectric tweeter. It offers a very different tonal color by comparison based on the EW300 is nimbler than the T10 and has more nuances rather than a linear response. Mid-range is rather similar in terms of tonal color as mid-range is rendered by a planar as well in the EW300. Treble is a little bit more energetic in the EW300 compared to the T10, which is a tad bit more relaxed. Both these two IMs are pretty nice. The EW300 perhaps a little bit more interesting as it has a tri-braid driver mix that is rare at this price point. And next up, ratings. The Artti T10 is a very competent planar IM, fighting it out in the sub $100 category. I think it has a lot of things going for it. So starting off with bass, it has a typical planar tonality that is characterized by having a rather linear bass response. It does bass quite nicely, solid 6.5. Mid-range has good space in the sonicscape through its good curation of bass. It delivers quite even tonality for both male and female vocals, a 7. Treble isn't as spicy as other planars, which is nice, so it gets a 7. Resolution on the whole is very decent for its price. One thing to note is that you need to have a decent dongle to actually maximize this. It gets a 7. Soundstage. It does well when it comes to width and height, but falters a little when it comes to depth due to the bass response. It's a 6.5. And lastly, the most important rating criteria, the enjoyment factor. I'd say that the T10 is a pair that you will enjoy quite a bit as I had. It is a very friendly planar to get into. It gets a solid B+. And finally, in conclusion, at the end of the day, if you are looking for a planar IM and don't really want to spend too much money, I think that the T10 is a great choice to dip your toes in. It isn't the best planar IM out there, but then again, for the price, it's hard to find better. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode of the Supercharged Super Audio Show. If you like the content so far, please kindly press the like and subscribe button right here down below. It will help me out immensely. And you know what they say. They say if you do that, you will not get robbed by a monkey. With that said, I hope to see you guys soon.